The alien academy was silent, except for the sound of pages turning. Rows of young cadets sat inside a grand lecture hall made of shining steel and glass. The ceiling stretched high above them, glowing with white lights that never flickered. The air was clean, sharp, and filled with the faint hum of machines that kept the building alive. At the front of the hall, a tall alien instructor stood behind a long desk. His skin shimmered like silver stone, and his 4 black eyes scanned the room. Each cadet had a heavy textbook placed in front of them, the kind of book that looked important just by the weight of it. The cover carried golden letters, "The Great Compendium of Known Creatures." This was no ordinary book. It was the official guide to all life forms cataloged by the Galactic Union. Every student was told that the words in this book were truth. No one questioned it. The cadets opened to the section marked Terra, Planet 3, Sol System. They leaned forward eagerly. Everyone in the galaxy knew humans came from Terra, and so many strange animals lived there. The pages showed painted images of Earth creatures: a lion with golden fur and sharp teeth, a wolf with glowing eyes in the night, a massive bear with claws that could tear through metal doors. Each description praised the strength, speed, or danger of the animals. The cadets nodded, impressed. Yes, these were worthy beasts. Then they turned the page. On the top corner of the sheet was a small, striped animal. It had short legs, a flat body, and a narrow face with beady eyes. The picture made it look almost silly. Underneath, the words read, "Honey badger, small scavenger. Harmless, low intelligence. Avoid only for hygiene reasons." The hall broke into laughter. The sound echoed off the metal walls. "Harmless," one cadet shouted, his thin arms waving in the air. "Small scavenger," another repeated, covering his face as he laughed. "It looks like a child's toy," a third said. The aliens could not stop themselves. They had seen dangerous beasts on other planets. They had trained to fight monsters with claws, scales, or venom. But this tiny striped creature, the idea that humans had ever feared it seemed absurd. The instructor allowed the laughter to continue for a few moments before raising one silver hand. The cadets fell silent. His black eyes gleamed with amusement. "Yes," the instructor said slowly, his voice smooth like oil. "The honey badger, a minor creature of Terra. A scavenger, nothing more. It steals scraps of food from larger predators and hides in the ground. It is weak, small, and cowardly. Hardly worth our notice." Another round of chuckles rolled across the room. Pens scribbled notes. Honey badger, insignificant. At the back of the hall, one figure did not laugh. He did not smile. He did not even move. It was a human officer. He sat tall, dressed in dark navy uniform, the only human in the room. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp, like blades waiting in silence. He had been ordered to observe the cadets' training and make sure they understood the details of Terra's environment. When the laughter finally died, one alien cadet turned toward him. Her scales glowed green under the light, and her eyes were filled with mischief. "Tell us, human," she said. "Is it true? Is this little animal dangerous?" The room grew still again. Every cadet stared at the human, waiting for his answer. Surely he would confirm what the book said. Surely he would admit that the honey badger was nothing. The human officer's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. Not the smile of humor, but of memory. His voice was low, steady, and serious when he spoke. "Dangerous?" he said softly. "You have no idea." The silence deepened. The cadets looked at each other, confused. The textbook clearly said the animal was harmless. Why would the human speak otherwise? The officer leaned forward, folded his hands on the desk in front of him. His eyes locked on the green-scale cadet. "Your book is wrong," he said. "So very wrong. The cadets shifted in their seats. The instructor frowned, but he said nothing. "You read words written by people who have never stood near one," the officer continued. "People who never heard its growl, never saw its eyes, never watched it tear through enemies 10 times its size. They wrote from safety, from distance, not from truth." The alien cadets whispered nervously. Some laughed again, but softer this time, uncertain. The officer's gaze swept across the room, meeting every eye. His next words were like stone dropped in still water. "The honey badger is not harmless. It is not weak. It is not cowardly. It is the most fearless creature you will ever meet. And one day you will see for yourselves." The instructor cleared his throat and tapped the desk. "That will be enough," he said firmly, trying to regain control of the lesson. "Let's move on." But the cadets could not stop glancing back at the picture of the striped animal. Some tried to laugh again, but the sound felt hollow now. The human's voice echoed in their minds. "One day you will see for yourselves." The textbook called a honey badger a small scavenger. The aliens believed it, but the human knew better. The next cycle began with a message that spread quickly through the alien academy. Every cadet had been assigned to a survival test. It was a tradition, an old method of proving who was strong enough to serve in the Galactic Union. The task was simple on paper. Survive 1 week in a controlled environment filled with dangerous life. The cadets would carry basic tools, nothing more. Weapons were limited. Food had to be found in the wild. The chosen environment was unusual this time. Instead of the usual alien landscapes, desert worlds, frozen tundras, or toxic swamps, the cadets were told they would face a terror reserve zone. A section of Earth's ecosystem had been moved, protected, and left untamed on a nearby moon. The cadets would live inside it, breathing the same air humans breathed, walking the same ground Earth's animals once ruled. When the announcement was made, many cadets cheered. Terra was famous for its wildlife, but they had already studied the textbooks. They knew which creatures to fear and which to ignore. Lions, bears, crocodiles, worthy challenges. Snakes, spiders, insects, annoying but manageable. As for the smaller creatures, they were nothing but background noise. Inside the hangar bay, the cadets gathered in their sleek training armor, each carrying a survival pack. The silver-skinned instructor paced before them, his voice echoing in the chamber. "You'll be divided into groups," he said. "Your mission is to endure and adapt. This test will reveal your true discipline." The human officer stood at the edge of the group, arms crossed, silent. He wore no armor, only his Navy uniform. His job was not to fight, but to observe. Still, the cadets felt his presence like a shadow. As the doors opened and the ship prepared to leave, one cadet leaned toward another. His voice was mocking. "Do you think we'll meet the tiny scavenger?" he whispered. The other grinned. "If we do, I'll catch it and keep it as a pet." The word spread, and soon several cadets laughed quietly. The officer heard them. His face did not change, but his eyes did. He looked at them with that same sharpness he had shown in the classroom. No words, no smile, just a steady gaze of someone who knew something they did not. The shuttle dropped into the reserve zone with a hiss of steam. The doors opened, and humid air rushed in. The smell of soil, leaves, and water filled the cabin. For many cadets, it was their first time breathing air that was not filtered by machines. They stepped out into a jungle alive with sound. Birds screamed from the canopy above. Insects buzzed like static around them. Thick green vines hung low, and the ground was covered with roots and fallen leaves. Every step felt uncertain. The instructor gave the order, "Move in groups. Survey the terrain. Record every encounter. Do not waste resources." The cadets obeyed. Some moved with confidence, cutting through vines and brushing aside branches. Others glanced nervously at the shadows between the trees. The jungle was not silent. It breathed, it moved, it whispered with hidden life. The human officer followed behind, watching. He said little, but when he spoke, it was always the same warning. Do not underestimate anything here. The cadets nodded politely but dismissed his words. To them, the jungle was a test, not a threat. Hours passed. They encountered their first real danger, a crocodile lurking near a river crossing. The beast lunged from the water, jaws wide. But the cadets were ready. They used stun batons and shock nets, working together until the reptile retreated with a furious hiss. Cheers broke out. They marked a victory in their records. Later, a pack of wolves circled the group, eyes glowing yellow in the fading light. Again, the cadets worked as a team, using sound cannons to drive them away. More cheers, more boasting. We are better hunters than these primitive creatures. One cadet said proudly, "This test will be easy." The officer said nothing. He only scanned the trees, his eyes always moving, as though waiting for something unseen. Night fell. The jungle changed. The air grew cooler, the sounds louder. Shadows deepened, and strange cries echoed across the trees. The cadets lit small lamps and set up camp. They were tired, but they were also proud. As they sat around their small fire, one cadet lifted a piece of the textbook, still stored in his pack. He tapped the page with the striped animal. "Tomorrow," he said, smirking, "if we see one of these, I'll show you how weak it is." The others laughed, though softer this time. Some glanced at the officer. He stared into the flames, silent, as if remembering something distant. Finally he spoke. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the laughter like a knife. "You think the lions were your challenge. You think the wolves tested your strength. You're wrong." The cadets shifted uneasily. One asked, "Then what is the true test?" The officer looked at the jungle around them, the endless dark, the noises that grew closer in the night. His eyes narrowed. "You'll know when it comes," he said. "And when it does, you won't be ready." The fire crackled. The cadets fell silent. In the shadows, something small moved. Morning came slowly in the Terror Reserve. The sky above the jungle was pale gray, and the air was heavy with mist. Drops of water clung to every leaf, shining like glass. The cadets rose from their makeshift camp, stretching stiff muscles. Some complained about the insects that had bitten them during the night. Others bragged about how easily they had driven off the crocodile and wolves the day before. "Today will be simple," one cadet said with pride. "We have already faced the strongest creatures this jungle holds." The human officer walked past him without comment. His boots sank softly into the damp soil. His face was unreadable, but his eyes moved with care, scanning every branch, every shadow. He knew the jungle was never simple. The group pressed deeper into the reserve. Birds shrieked above them, flashes of bright feathers darting through the canopy. Monkeys howled from far away, their cries echoing like laughter. The cadets moved in formation, confident, their armor polished by dew. It was not long before they met another challenge. A massive bear lumbered across their path. For dark, breath steaming in the cool morning air. The cadets froze, but quickly recovered. They surrounded it, used sound blasts, and drove it back into the trees. When the danger was gone, one cadet shouted in triumph, raising his weapon. Another victory. More laughter followed. Their voices were bold, proud, almost careless. But the officer did not laugh. He only whispered as he passed them, "Every victory blinds you." The cadets frowned but ignored him. Hours later, the jungle grew quieter. The cries of birds faded. Even the buzzing of insects seemed less. A strange stillness spread through the air. The cadets noticed it, but did not understand. Then they saw it. A small striped animal stood on the path ahead. Its body was low to the ground, its fur black and white. It sniffed the soil, turning over leaves with sharp claws. It looked almost lazy, almost harmless. One cadet pointed and laughed. There it is, the tiny scavenger. The others joined in, their voices echoing through the trees. Small scavenger, one repeated. Harmless, another added. We should catch it for study, a third suggested. The officer's head snapped up. His voice was sharp, commanding. Leave it alone. The cadet stopped laughing for a moment, surprised at the sudden force in his words. One of them, bold and curious, tilted his head. Why? He asked. It is only a scavenger. The book says so. The officer's jaw tightened. His eyes locked on the animal. Do not touch it, he said. But the cadets had grown too confident. One stepped forward, a grin on his face. He bent down, picked up a stick from the ground, and tossed it at the creature. The stick bounced off the animal's back. The honey badger froze. It lifted its head slowly. Small, black eyes locked on Cadet. The growl that followed was low and sharp, rising like thunder from a tiny body. The sound cut through the jungle, heavy with rage. The cadets fell quiet. The laughter died instantly. The animal moved. It was not slow. It was not weak. It was fire. The honey badger charged with a scream that tore through the silence. Its teeth sank into the cadet's leg before he could even raise his weapon. He howled, stumbling back, trying to shake it off. But the creature held on with impossible strength. Another cadet rushed forward, striking with a baton. The blow landed hard, but the honey badger did not let go. It twisted, bit again, and the second cadet yelped as claws ripped across his arm. Panic spread. More cadets tried to help. Sound blasts rattled the trees. Stunned charges flashed in the mist. But the honey badger fought on, wild, furious, refusing to fall. The officer barked orders. Back away. Give it space. But the cadets did not listen. They fired again and again. The small creature spun and struck, never stopping, never retreating. Finally, one cadet managed to pull his wounded comrade free. Blood stained the ground. The honey badger stood alone, chest heaving, teeth red, eyes burning. For a long moment, no one moved. The cadets stared in shock. This was no scavenger. This was no coward. This was something else entirely. The officer stepped forward. His voice was calm now, almost cold. This is what I warned you about, he said. This is the truth your books refuse to tell. The honey badger snarled, daring them to move closer. None did. At last, it turned, lumbered into the undergrowth, and vanished. The jungle seemed to breathe again, sound slowly returning, but the cadets did not feel safe. One of them whispered, trembling, it should not be possible. It was small. The officer's gaze was hard, unblinking. Small, he said, does not mean harmless. The cadets said nothing. Their pride was broken. Their confidence cracked. For the first time, the jungle did not feel like a game. And deep in the shadows, unseen by them, more eyes watched. The jungle held its breath. After the first encounter, the cadets stood frozen, their weapons half raised, their eyes locked on the shadows where the honey badger had disappeared. The ground was still marked with blood, and the cadet who had been bitten groaned as others tried to wrap his leg. His armor was torn, his skin shredded. No one laughed now. The officer's voice was steady, cutting through the silence. You see now, this is no scavenger. This is no harmless creature. This is a storm in a small body. But even as he spoke, the undergrowth shook again. Leaves rustled. Branches snapped. The cadets tightened their grip on their weapons. The honey badger came back. It burst from the bushes with a roar so fierce that every cadet stepped backward. Its body looked small, but its fury filled the jungle. Foam clung to its jaws, its black eyes wild and sharp. The wounded cadet screamed in fear and scrambled away on the ground. "Hold position," the instructor shouted. But his voice was thin now, uncertain. The creature struck. It hurled itself at the closest cadet, claws ripping at armor plates, teeth sinking into exposed flesh. The cadet shrieked, swinging his baton again and again. Sparks flew, but the badger did not stop. It clamped tighter, shaking its head like a predator far larger than its size. Another cadet fired a stun blast. Blue light flashed, hitting the creature square in the ribs. For an instant it stumbled. Relief rushed through the group until it rose again. Still alive, still raging. "Impossible!" one cadet gasped, but the officer only growled. "This is normal." The honey badger turned on the cadet who had fired the shot. With a scream, it charged, biting to the weapon itself, snapping metal with terrifying strength. The alien dropped what was left of the ruined tool and staggered back in shock. Then chaos broke. Cadets scattered, shouting, tripping over roots and vines. Sound cannons blasted. Beams of light shot across the mist, but nothing slowed the creature. It spun, it clawed, it bit, it refused to fall. Every strike seemed to fuel its rage. One cadet tried to climb a tree. He made it halfway up before the badger leapt, tearing into his foot and dragging him down. His scream cut through the air like a knife. The officer stepped forward at last, his voice sharp as iron. "Stop fighting it directly. You waste your strength." But panic had already taken the group. The cadets fired wildly, stumbling into each other, shouting into their comms for evacuation. "Emergency! Emergency! We are under attack!" one cried. "Send rescue ships!" another screamed. The response came cold through their earpieces. "Extraction is not possible. Hold position for 12 more hours." The words hit harder than any weapon. 12 hours. Against this, the honey badger slashed another cadet across the chest, tearing through armor. The alien fell with a gasp, blood spraying the ground. The others pulled him back, their movements clumsy, desperate. The officer barked again, his voice commanding, refusing to bend. "Back away. Form a circle. Do not let fear scatter you." Slowly, shakily, they obeyed. They pulled together, weapons raised, forming a ring of trembling figures. The honey badger stood in the center, chest heaving, fur wet with blood, not just theirs, but its own. Wounds covered its body, yet it did not slow. It did not fear. For a moment, the cadets simply stared at it, disbelief in their eyes. "How can it still fight?" one whispered. The officer answered with grim certainty. "Because it does not know how to stop." The creature lunged again, smashing into their line. The cadets staggered, screaming, pushing back with everything they had. Shock waves cracked the air. Branches split. The jungle shook. Still, the honey badger fought. Minutes felt like hours. Every second was a storm. At last, the cadets managed to drive it back. Not kill it, not defeat it. Only push it far enough into the shadows that it vanished once more. They stood trembling, their armor torn, their bodies bleeding, their breaths ragged. No one spoke. The jungle filled again with the cries of birds, as if mocking their weakness. The fire of their pride was gone. In its place was silence, heavy and sharp. The officer walked slowly around the circle, his eyes hard. He looked at their faces, pale and shaken. Finally he spoke. "Now you know why your book is wrong. Now you know why I warned you." The green-scaled cadet, the one who had first mocked the animal, dropped her eyes in shame. Her voice shook. "We thought it was small." The officer's reply was cold. "Small does not mean weak. Small does not mean harmless. The honey badger fights until death or until you run. The cadets said nothing. Their hands trembled as they cleaned their weapons. Their eyes kept drifting to the shadows, expecting the creature to return at any moment. The officer turned toward the jungle. His voice dropped lower, meant for himself more than for them. "And this," he whispered, "is only the beginning." Deep in the darkness, unseen, the honey badger moved again. It was wounded. It was bleeding, but it was not finished. The jungle was no longer their test. It was a honey badger's battlefield, and the cadets had already lost. The jungle did not rest. The cadets tried to. After the furious attack, they retreated to higher ground, a slope above the river. They worked quickly, building a defensive ring with energy beacons. The beacons gave off a faint hum and created a soft blue glow, marking the edge of their camp. It was supposed to keep out predators. But no one believed it would keep out that. The wounded lay on the ground, groaning as Med Joe was poured into torn flesh. Armor pieces had been shredded beyond repair, tossed aside like scraps. The cadets' proud formation was gone. Now they huddled together in silence. No one laughed anymore. The officer moved among them with calm steps. His uniform was dirty, stained with soil and blood, yet his posture was firm. He checked the wounds, tightened bandages, then returned to his post at the edge of the circle. His eyes scanned the trees. He did not sit, did not rest. He watched, always. The cadets whispered to each other when he was not near. It should not still be alive. No creature can take that much pain. What is it? Their voices were thin, edged with fear. The instructor tried to restore order. He raised his silver arms and spoke loudly. "Enough. It was only one animal. It will not return. Remain calm." But his voice carried no power anymore. Even he did not sound certain. The night crept in. The jungle shifted again. Cries of unseen beasts echoed through the trees. The cadets sat around a low fire, weapons on their laps, eyes darting at every sound. It was then that another noise came, soft at first, a rustle of leaves, a scrape of claws on stone. The cadets lifted their weapons at once, hearts pounding. The sound came from beyond the beacon line. Shadows moved in the mist. The officer's voice was calm but sharp, steady. The rustling grew louder. Branches bent. A low growl rolled through night air. Then, from the darkness, the honey badger appeared again. Gasps tore from the cadets. Their hands shook. The creature limped. Its fur matted with blood, but its eyes burned with the same wild fire. Its chest heaved. Its teeth gleamed in the firelight. It had been wounded again and again, but still it came. The cadets raised their weapons. One fired a stun bolt, another a sound blast. Blue sparks crackled against the beacon barrier, but the honey badger did not flinch. It walked forward, slowly, as if daring them. Then it stopped. Its head turned, scanning them with black, unblinking eyes. And from the shadows behind it came another, a second honey badger. The cadets froze. Disbelief choked their voices. No, there cannot be more. It's impossible. But the second creature stepped forward, snarling. Its fur was darker, its body leaner, but its fury matched the first. The jungle rustled again. Leaves shook, twigs cracked. The cadets turned wildly, weapons aimed in every direction. A third one crawled out from under a log. Then a fourth, sliding from the underbrush. Soon the cadets counted 6. 6 pairs of eyes glowing in the dark. 6 striped bodies moving with the same fearless rage. Terror spread through the group like fire. "They're surrounding us," one cadet screamed. "This is not natural," another shouted. The officer stood firm, though his jaw tightened. His voice rang out, louder than the chaos. Hold your ground. Do not break. The creatures did not attack all at once. That was the worst part. They circled, snarling, their growls rumbling through the mist. Every step they took tightened the fear in the cadets' hearts. One cadet, trembling, lost control. He fired a full stun charge into the dark. The flash lit the jungle, blinding everyone for a heartbeat. It was enough. The first honey badger leapt. It crashed into the circle, teeth and claws tearing, fury exploding again. The cadets screamed, firing wildly, but the others followed. One tore into a supply pack, shredding rations and gear. Another leapt onto a cadet's back, dragging him down into the mud. The ring broke. Cadets scattered in every direction. Beacons fell. The blue glow flickered and died. The jungle swallowed them whole. The officer shouted, "Stay together," but his words were lost in the chaos. The honey badgers hunted them like shadows. No fear, no hesitation. They attacked from behind, from above, from below. Every sound in the jungle became a weapon against the cadets' minds. One group tried to cross the river, splashing into the dark water. A crocodile lunged at them, but even as they fought it off, 2 honey badgers tore into their legs from a bank. Their screams echoed across the night. Another group climbed trees, thinking they were safe, but the creatures clawed up the trunks, unstoppable, dragging them down one by one. Everywhere, terror spread. The cadets begged into their comms. "Command! Command! We are overrun. Send help. Please." But the same answer came. Cold, unchanged, extraction in 12 hours. Survive until then. 12 hours felt like 12 years. The officer fought to pull survivors together. He struck the creatures with shock rods, pulled cadets back from death, shouted orders that few obeyed. His uniform was torn now, blood, some is, some not, streaked his arms. Yet his eyes burned with the same fire as the creatures themselves. At last, after what felt like endless battle, the honey badgers pulled back, not defeated, not killed, only satisfied for the moment. They vanished into the mist, leaving behind wounded, broken cadets. The survivors crawled together, panting, shaking. Their numbers were fewer now, their spirits crushed. No one spoke for a long time. Only the sound of whimpering filled the night. Finally, one cadet whispered, voice trembling, Why do they not fear us?" The officer looked at him, his face shadowed by firelight. His voice was heavy, filled with cold truth. Because they fear nothing. Not death, not pain, not you. That is their power. And that is why humans respect them. The cadets lowered their eyes. They understood now, even if they wished they did not. The jungle had taught them what textbooks never could. But the night was not over. From deep in the darkness, more growls rose. Dozens. The cadets' blood turned to ice. The officer stood tall, staring into the shadows. He whispered words only a few heard. "This is the lesson, and it has only just begun." The jungle roared back. The jungle was silent again, but it was not peace. It was the silence of exhaustion, of fear hiding in the dark. The cadets huddled together near the ruins of their camp. Their beacons were gone, their supplies scattered, their weapons bent and broken. The fire they had tried to keep alive burned low, only embers glowing red in the dirt. They were no longer proud warriors in training. They were survivors, trembling and wounded, their wide eyes fixed on the shadows. The officer stood apart from them, his back straight, his face calm. His uniform was torn across the chest, and blood streaked his arm, but he moved as if the injuries meant nothing. His eyes stayed sharp, watching the tree line. The cadets whispered among themselves. There were too many of them. They should not exist in such numbers. They are demons, not animals. The words carried panic, disbelief. They wanted an explanation, anything to make sense of what had happened. Finally, one cadet, his scales pale from blood loss, raised his voice. "Officer, why do these small creatures fight with such madness? Why do they not retreat, even when wounded?" The officer turned, his gaze sweeping across the group. His voice was steady, low, and cold. "You are asking the wrong question." The cadets frowned. Confused murmurs spread. The officer stepped closer. He crouched near the fire, picking up a broken stick from the ground. He held in the flames until it glowed faintly red, then drew a line in the dirt. "The question is not why they fight," he said. "The question is why you cannot." The cadets stared. One spoke, his voice bitter. "We fought. We used every weapon, every formation, every strategy, and still we barely survived." The officer nodded slowly. "Yes, you fought until fear broke you. You fought until the numbers seemed too many. You fought until you thought you could not win." He pointed into the jungle, toward the shadows where the honey badgers had vanished. But those creatures do not fight with limits. They do not measure risk. They do not count enemies. They do not stop. That is the lesson you are blind to. The green scale cadet who had once mocked the animal bowed her head, shame written in every line of her body. "The textbook lied," she whispered. The officer's lips curved in the faintest shadow of a smile, but it was not kindness. "The textbook told you what you wanted to hear. It called the honey badger scavenger because it looks small, because it does not shine like a predator in paintings, because it does not care about glory or rank. It only cares about surviving. And survival, cadets, is the purest strength." The fire cracked. Sparks floated up, then vanished. The cadets leaned closer, drawn to his words in spite of their fear. "You think lions rule the jungle," the officer continued, "but lions can be hunted. You think wolves are dangerous, but wolves retreat when outnumbered. You think crocodiles are patient killers, but crocodiles will flee if wounded enough. Every great predator has limits." He leaned forward, his eyes catching the glow of the embers. "The honey badger has none. It does not retreat. It does not fear. It does not surrender, even when torn apart. That is why humans respect it. That is why we tell stories about it, because it reflects the truth about us." The cadets looked at him with unease. One whispered, "About humans?" The officer nodded. "Yes. You see, cadets, humanity was never the strongest. We were never the fastest, never the largest, never the deadliest. Every planet we visited in our early days tried to kill us. Beasts stronger than lions, storms harsher than fire, diseases that erased villages in a week. We should have died out." His voice hardened. "But we did not, because we learned from creatures like the honey badger. Fearless, relentless, willing to fight until the last drop of blood. That is why we survived." The cadets shifted uneasily. His words were heavy, each one sinking deep into their minds. He rose to his feet, standing tall over them now. His silhouette loomed against the fading fire. "You laughed when you saw the picture in the book. You thought small meant weak. But humanity knows better. We know that survival is not about size. It is about will. And there is no will stronger than that of a creature that refuses to die quietly." One cadet raised his hand, trembling. "Then, these honey badgers, are they trained? Did you bring them here?" The officer's eyes narrowed. "No, they are natural. This is what Earth creates. You have only seen a glimpse." A hush fell over the group. The thought that Earth held more creatures like this, more fear, more madness, more raw survival, made their skin crawl. The officer let the silence linger before speaking again, softer now, almost like a warning. If you think the honey badger is terrifying, imagine the humans who learned from it. Imagine a species that took the lesson of fearlessness and made it our own. Imagine soldiers who fight not because they believe they will win, but because they refuse to lose. The cadets looked at each other, their eyes wide. The pieces were falling together now. One muttered, "That is why you survive wars. That is why you hold planets no one else dares to touch." The officer did not confirm. He did not need to. His silence was answer enough. For a long time, no one spoke. The fire burned lower, shadows deepened, and the jungle's cries rose again in the distance. The cadets sat in silence, their thoughts darker than the night. At last, the officer turned back to the trees. His voice was almost gentle now, though still edged with steel. "You have 12 hours until extraction. You can spend them trembling, or you can spend them learning. The choice is yours." The cadets stared at him. Some clenched their fists, shame burning in their eyes. Others looked away, broken by the weight of his words. The officer did not wait for their answers. He stepped beyond the circle of light, into the edge of the shadows. His eyes scanned the jungle, searching. He stood there like a guardian, silent and unshaken. Behind him, the cadets finally whispered to each other, "He is not afraid. He is one of them." "No," another said quietly, staring at the officer's back. "He is worse, because he has the mind of a man and the heart of a honey badger." The jungle stirred again. Growls echoed, closer this time. The cadets stiffened. The officer glanced back, his face calm, his voice sharp. "Remember what I told you. Stand your ground. Survive. That is your lesson." And then the growls became screams. The jungle was not finished. The night stretched on like a wound that would not close. The jungle seemed alive, every shadow moving, every whisper carrying menace. The cadets clutched their weapons, their hands slick with sweat, their hearts beating too fast. They had seen too much, lost too many. But the officer stood tall. His posture never bent. His eyes never blinked at the dark. He was a single figure against a sea of fear, and somehow that steadiness kept the cadets from breaking completely. The growls came again, low at first, then louder, from the left, from the right, from behind. The honey badgers were not gone. They had been waiting, watching. The cadets pressed closer together, shaking. One whispered, "We cannot take another attack." The officer's voice cut through their fear like a blade. "You will, or you will die." His words were harsh, but they burned with truth. The cadets lifted their weapons. They knew they could not run. The jungle had shown them that escape was impossible. The only path left was to fight. The shadows moved. Eyes gleamed in the dark. The honey badgers charged. The cadets fired at once. Beams of energy flashed. Bolts cracked. Sound cannon screamed. The jungle lit up with chaos. But the honey badgers did not slow. They crashed into group, clawing, biting, tearing. Armor split. Scales ripped. Screams filled the night. A cadet fell, dragged into the brush. Another tried to run, and was struck down before taking 10 steps. The officer roared, not in fear, but in command. "Stand. Do not scatter." He moved like fire, shock rod swinging, rifle blasting, fist striking. A honey badger leapt at him, jaws snapping, and he caught it midair, slamming it into the dirt. Another sank teeth into his leg, and he kicked it away with brutal force. He fought as if pain did not exist, as if nothing could break him. The cadets saw it, and something stirred in them. They remembered his words. Survival is will. For the first time, they did not shoot blindly. They stood their ground. They formed a circle, covering each other's backs. They fired with discipline, struck with purpose, shouted to warn and guide. It was not perfect. It was messy, bloody, desperate. But it was no longer a rout. It was a stand. The honey badgers felt the change. They snarled, they pressed harder, but they met resistance now. Not just panic, but resolve. Minutes dragged like hours. The ground was slick with blood, fur, and mud. Still the cadets fought. Still, the officer's voice kept them steady. And then, as sudden as it began, the creatures pulled back. The jungle fell silent once more. The cadets sagged, gasping, their bodies trembling with exhaustion. Some dropped their weapons. Others wept openly. But none fled. None collapsed into full despair. The officer stood in the center, his chest heaving, his uniform shredded. His face was streaked with blood, yet his eyes burned brighter than the fire. He looked at them, one by one. Now you understand. The cadets stared back. Something had shifted in their eyes. Fear remained, yes, but beneath it burned a small flame of defiance. The green-scaled cadet, once the loudest mocker, whispered hoarsely, small but not weak. The officer nodded. They gathered the wounded, rebuilt a small fire, and sat in silence. The jungle was not finished, but for now it held back. Hours crawled by. The cadets did not sleep. They sat with weapons ready, listening to every sound. They were different now. No longer laughing students, but something harder, something sharper. At dawn, the jungle fog lifted. Light streamed through the canopy, pale and golden. The cadets looked around and saw the battlefield of the night. Bodies of honey badgers lay scattered, broken, and burned. Yet even in death, their faces looked fierce, their jaws locked in eternal defiance. The officer stood over one of them. He crouched, touched its striped fur, and bowed his head for a moment. Then he rose and turned back to the cadets. "This is your lesson," he said. "Not from me, from them. From the creatures you thought were nothing." The cadets said nothing. They only looked at him, at the beasts, at the jungle. The truth was heavy, undeniable. A sharp tone cut through the air. The comms crackled. Extraction inbound. Coordinates locked. Hold position. The cadets' shoulders sagged with relief. But it was not the wild, desperate relief of cowards. It was quiet, tired, hardened. They had survived. Minutes later, the dropship roared to the canopy, thrusters blasting leaves and dirt into the air. The ramp dropped. Soldiers in clean armor waved them aboard. The cadets limped up, carrying the wounded, their bodies aching, their minds scarred. The officer was last aboard. He paused at the edge of the jungle, looking back one final time. The honey badgers were gone, their bodies carried away by the mist, but their presence lingered. He whispered words only the wind heard. Good teachers. Then he turned and stepped onto the ship. The ramp closed. The jungle vanished below. Inside, the cadets slumped into seats, silent. No one mocked, no one joked. Their eyes were different now. They had seen something they could never forget. The instructor, shaken and pale, tried to speak. You were not meant to face this. It was too much. The officer's gaze was sharp. No, it was exactly enough. The cadets looked at him. They knew he was right. The ship lifted higher, engines screaming. Through the small windows, the planet shrank below them, the jungle fading into green shadows. But in their minds, the final image burned. The honey badger, small, bloodied, but unbroken. The human, standing tall in the firelight, bloodied, but unbroken. Two creatures, worlds apart, yet the same in spirit. That was the lesson. That was what they would carry forever. And somewhere deep inside each cadet, a seed had been planted. A seed of defiance. A seed of will. They would never laugh at small scavengers again.